Is DoorDash stealing tips again? Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We've come across a very unique situation where a Dasher only received a fraction of their tip. And we're going to go over the details in this video, so stay tuned. Hello everyone, this is Elijah with the Rideshare Guy. And in this video, we're going to be covering a particular situation that resulted in a Dasher not being tipped the full amount that he was owed. Now, I've personally been a delivery driver for various apps such as Uber Eats, Doordash, and Postmates back when that was the thing. And I can personally tell you that we make a lot of our money off of tips. So with that statement being said, you can probably understand why this is a big issue to us as delivery drivers. That's why we're going to be covering the incident that recently happened that involved the Dasher not getting paid the full tip amount, him letting the customer know that he feels the tip should be higher. The customer looked into it, and then upon further inspection, he saw that the money that he tipped was not fully given to the driver. There's a few factors that came into this, and that's what we're going to cover right now. Now, it should be noted that all the information I'm going to be sharing with you is sourced and comes from the customer's blog. His name is Chad Dickerson, and he actually did some independent research on the issue that he encountered, and throughout his investigation, he found some very puzzling things in regard to this tipping situation. But the article is going to be linked in the description below if you want to personally take a look at it. So now that we have the right context for the situation, we're going to move over to the computer so I can show you some of this article and the puzzling things that he found out when he looked into this issue further. So to explain the situation, I'm going to read directly from Chad's blog. Again, if you want to see this article for yourself, you can click the link in the description below. So Chad writes, when I ordered some beer via Drizzly this past Friday afternoon and wrote about a really negative experience I had in this transaction, I had no idea the rest of my weekend would be dominated by what happened next as my tweet really took off, especially among journalists and regulators. Short version. I ordered beer via Drizzly and it was delivered by a Doordash driver. I tipped a Doordash driver $19.59. My driver arrived and said he wished that I had tipped more. I was puzzled since I tipped $19.59 and he showed me his driver app with a customer tip of $4. I asked him to send a screenshot of his app and I included that in the tweet thread. I want to thank the driver for speaking up to me and not just swallowing the unfair experience. So right off the bat, we see that something is going on because the Dasher didn't receive their full tip. They communicated that with the customer, which big thumbs up for doing that. Very commendable. And the customer knew something was off because he did tip a lot. That just wasn't reflected in the driver's app. So before we get any further, you should know that there's basically 5 entities in this situation. There's Drizzly, there's DoorDash, there's the merchant, there's him as the customer, and there's the driver. That's important to note because we're going to go further into the article. Scrolling down, we're going to take a look at the tweet that he first sent out on his Twitter. I just had the grossest interaction with Drizzly and DoorDash, and they both deserve to be embarrassed and ashamed at their disgusting level of greed. Here's the story. So DoorDash did respond to Chad's tweet saying, thank you for alerting us to this issue. DoorDash always provides 100% of tips to Dashers. So we immediately started an investigation to uncover what occurred and how to make it right. Here's what we discovered and the actions we have taken. Now we're going to scroll a little further because apparently he couldn't put everything DoorDash said just because of the nature of how Twitter is set up. So it was more easier for him to just put in the blog. The merchant entered $4 into the tip field instead of the full amount provided by you, the customer. Our policies and contract with the merchant require the merchant to provide the full tip amount to DoorDash, which we then provide in full to the Dasher. By withholding a part of Dasher's tip when it relayed the order information to us, the merchant violated our policies and their contract with us. Scrolling down. Far more importantly, it meant that a Dasher was shortchanged the full tip you provided to them. This is unacceptable and a clear violation of our contract with the merchant, who was immediately removed from Doordash Drive. In other words, DoorDash is pretty much saying that it wasn't their intent for this to happen and that the merchant initiated this shortchanging of the Dasher not receiving their tip. And with that being the case, they've started looking into the issue and they've removed them from the platform DoorDash Drive. The CRO of DoorDash, Tom Pickett, actually reached out to Chad to speak with him about this issue. He assured Chad that 99% of transactions on DoorDash go through a fully integrated system where it's not possible to alter the tip. Chad also noted that he appreciated the fact that Tom didn't make any excuses for what happened. He just basically said, this is basically the numbers and the scenario that we're working with. While this is going on, a few people actually did tweet back to Chad, basically saying that they've checked with their dashers on various deliveries to confirm that they have gotten the full tip amount, which is kind of reimbursing what the CRO said about the numbers and how 99% of the time the dasher gets the tip amount that the customer actually tipped. He then later received a response from Drizzly themselves saying that in reviewing your order, it would appear that this was delivered by our retail partner's driver, not DoorDash. Chad basically responded saying that this doesn't really make any sense, that how much I tipped is not lining up with what the driver or dasher received. And he gets the impression that this is very uncoordinated between Drizzly, the merchant, and DoorDash. And I'm getting that same impression because it seems convoluted for no reason. But we're going to get into that a little later. Drizzly then added to the conversation that when orders are placed through Drizzly, it is our intention for the tips to go to the driver. As Drizzly does not keep any portion of the tip, in most cases, this is what happens. Please note that each store manages their own individual tipping policy at their own discretion. However, so the tips received may be distributed differently from store to store. 24 hours after his original tweet, Drizzly actually reached out to Chad on Twitter and responded. And the response was, "Hi, Chad. Thank you again for bringing this to our attention. Delivery workers are critical in making every Drizzly delivery a reality, and we treat situations like this with the utmost importance. Drizzly never receives any portion of customer tips. The standard protocol is that tips are collected directly by Drizzly retail partner or are automatically passed to the third-party delivery partners such as DoorDash for ultimate distribution to the delivery personnel. Unfortunately, this order did not follow standard protocol. Instead, the retailer skipped the standard Drizzly DoorDash integration and summoned DoorDash on their own after the transaction was complete. We've launched an immediate investigation into your order. DoorDash assures that the driver has now received the full tip. We pause the retail partner's Drizzly account while we conduct a further investigation." Now, there are a few more tweets between Chad and Drizzly and also DoorDash, but the nuts and bolts of the situation have already been covered. But if you want to know every single detail, I would encourage you to actually check out his blog and read the details because it is actually pretty interesting. But here's the nuts and bolts of what ended up happening. So Chad's conclusion is that his order went to Drizzly and he entered the tip of $19.59. The merchant decided to use DoorDash white label Doordash Drive product sometime after the order was submitted, which allowed any merchant, even those outside of DoorDash's marketplace that you use to order food, to make the delivery happen. When the merchant actually used DoorDash Drive, they actually used a different DoorDash account that was not integrated into the system to make the delivery. And this is why they even had the option to alter the tip in the first place. Under normal circumstances, you shouldn't have the option to even change the tip. It should be set in place as the delivery goes through its motions. But since they used this tactic, they were able to get around this. Merchant entered a $4 tip in the DoorDash Drive portal that is used to manage orders, not the full $19.59 that Chad had originally entered in the Drizzly app. Just as a visual of what the DoorDash Drive portal help page looks like, you can see on the screen where you can change, or not change, but you can put in the driver tip amount that you want in there. So the good news about all this is the Dasher actually did receive their full tip. DoorDash made sure that once they found out that this happened. So that's definitely great news. But just as Chad has brought out throughout his whole article, steps should be taken so that there's no chance that this can ever happen again. Sadly, in DoorDash's response, they said that they're looking for solutions to ensure this won't happen again, meaning that as of right now, it could happen again because the CRO of DoorDash directly said that 99% of the time this can't happen because of how things are set up, but there is that 1% of the time where it could happen. We want to see steps eventually taken to where this can happen 0% of the time where it just can't happen. And Chad had a few curious questions and suggestions that could probably help this come about if they're implemented in the future. And I got to say, I agree with what these are. The first one is having a more clear policy, because if you actually go through the article, it mentions that the merchant, what they did was in violation of policy, but the way the policy was written, it could be kind of unclear. A more direct interpretation of the policy that clearly states the dashers need to receive 100% of their tips directly could benefit here. That way, merchants wouldn't even be thinking about doing something like this. And if they did, they would know that, hey, I have to make sure all the tip goes to the dasher, otherwise, there's going to be problems. Another potential solution is to, from an API and technology perspective, make sure that this simply can't happen. In closing out, I do want to share Chad's comment on why don't you just tip drivers in cash? Because some people have come at him saying that, and he addressed that in this article. I'm just going to read verbatim. Not such a simple solution. A lot of people said I should have just tipped with cash, and they will put a note on the order saying something like, "We'll tip with cash when you deliver." If the tip amount isn't always passed on to the driver, I think it's safe to say that the message about a tip might not make it either. Also, many delivery people I've dealt with don't speak English, so your message may be impossible for them to read. Finally, according to one of the only DoorDash drivers I saw in the thread, it reduces the incentive to even make a delivery at all. Now, I can personally say that all that is true, and if we're being honest, even if you see the will tip you with cash when you get here, that doesn't guarantee that that's true. There are people out there that will just put that in there just to put it in there and they're not going to tip. Sad to say, but that scenario is out there. Chad then shares a personal story that he experienced when he was a driver. Speaking to someone who did food delivery in a time where cash tips were customary, it's also absolutely terrifying to approach an unknown house or apartment at 1 a.m. on a Saturday with pockets full of cash. I recall someone sneaking up behind me in a parking lot once and saying, "Hey, give me your money," only to laugh it off and say, "Just kidding." Now, that is unbelievably cruel, but let's keep going. Imagine if there's a mass movement where everyone gave cash to get around the lack of transparency and tipping in some of the delivery apps. The unintended consequences are clear in a population that is already vulnerable to robbery. Tipping in the apps could actually promote greater safety for drivers, and we have to depend on our money getting to the right place. Right on, Chad. And you can definitely tell that Chad has been a DoorDash driver and he sympathizes with us. In the article towards the beginning, he shares that he drove for delivery apps for 2 years when he is struggling to make ends meet. And this is why he can relate to us so much. And he found the passion to really dig into this issue because he's been on that other side of the coin. Big props to you, Chad, for doing your research and bringing this to light. And hopefully, in the very near future, a system can be implemented by DoorDash to make sure that this isn't even possible for their third party merchants to even alter the tip in the first place. I do feel like this shouldn't have even been an option, and there is some way of making sure this can't happen again. We just got to put our eyes in the right place and figure out a system to make that a thing. But how do y'all feel about this in the comments? Do you feel like this situation was very poorly handled? Where do you feel that improvements can be made so that this doesn't happen to another dasher? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Hit that bell notification so you can be notified when we come out with another video. We publish new videos every single week about the gig economy, covering stories just like this, as well as other tactics and strategies on how to make the most money in the least amount of time with both delivery and rideshare apps. And if you found value in this video, give a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. It's very much appreciated. This is Elijah for the Rideshare Guy. Be safe, be profitable.